Here.
Jonathan Hemphill.
Karen Taylor sitting in for Jonathan Hemphill as an alternate.
Thank you. Andrew Lewis.
Present.
Kirk McLean.
Here.
Joe McDermott.
Here.
Ed Prince.
Here.
Zanita Reed.
Here.
We have 9 members attending plus 1 alternate for Jonathan Hemphill. We are still waiting on Nancy Backus and Reagan Dunn.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. So today we're going to get an update on racial equity and anti-oppression training. We're going to approve the minutes from our July 16th meeting. Public comment, consideration of an implementation board appointee, update on the CEO hiring process and timeline, initial staffing plan, and then we're going to have a conversation about committee bylaws. With that, let's get started with the update on racial equity and anti-oppression training. Briefing by Kirk.
Okay, good morning, everyone. With regard to this racial equity training, I've consulted with the LEC, our larger coalition, and we have decided that we are going to utilize the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, the national organization, for this training for the governing board and the implementation board. I also would like to say that and I'm just going to read this. This is what I've been told. The People's Institute has a 25-year relationship with with Seattle's and King County's grassroots community, and with Seattle Human Services Department and with King County government. The People's Institute their work here has formed the foundation for the Thinking for the King County's entire racial equity work, staffing, and infrastructure. It is the origin of that thinking that has led us here today. King County and the City of Seattle's Human Services Department racial equity work, including, King County and the City of Seattle's Human Services Department racial equity work, including the Race and Social Justice Initiative, or RSJI, originated with the People's Institute, and we believe that it is important that we build on that foundation. Dr. Kimberly Richards, the interim director of the People's Institute, will work collaboratively with the LEC, the governing committee, and the implementation board on scheduling and design of the training. So at this point, just a quick word, this training really needs to be customized for our group. And so there's going to be a time where we need to have discussions with Dr. Kimberly Richards about scheduling and about how we're actually going to, how long it's going to be, all those details. We are currently getting those things worked out now. And we will bring that information back to you as soon as we can, as soon as we can get that done. So that is pretty much the update. Are there any questions? Okay.
Any questions from the committee? All right, thank you, Kirk. Approval of the minutes from July 16th.
I move the approval of the minutes from July 16th.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, oh God, we do a roll call on this, don't we? Sarah?
All right. Nancy Backus. Pending. Angela Burney.
Aye.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn. Jenny Durkin.
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez.
Aye.
Jonathan Hemphill.
Aye.
Andrew Lewis.
Aye.
Kirk McLean.
Yeah, I'm here.
This is for approval of the minutes.
Aye.
Thank you. Joe McDermott.
Aye.
Ed Prince.
Aye.
Zanita Reed.
Aye.
10 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, thank you so much. The ayes have it. Next on our agenda, public comment. Is there anyone signed up for public comment, Sarah?
There is not. I would like to remind attendees to sign up for public comment. You can enter into the chat. The chat should be open, so just enter your name and I will call on you in the order in which you enter your name.
Sarah Reagan Dunn here.
Thank you. I will mark Reagan Dunn as now attending. Present.
Just note that I was on the call-in line the whole time. For some reason, can't be heard that way, so I'm on Zoom.
Oh, apologies. Thank you. All right, first up for public comment, we have Mark Dones. Mark, I am going to unmute you. You will have 2 minutes. Give me one quick second and I'll let you know when you are ready. Mark Dones, you should be ready. You have 2 minutes. That time will start as soon as you start speaking.
Great. Hey, everybody. Mark Dones, Executive Director of NIS. It is good to see so many of you. I wanted, one, just to say hi. I always like to say hi. But then two, I wanted to offer my support for the Lived Experience Coalition having their direct power to appoint. I think that I want to go way back to 2018 when we started this journey together. And one of the things that we started all this with was a fundamental belief that by moving power and decision-making closest to those who are impacted, that we would be able to build a system that could actually execute on the goals that the region had. And that belief was reaffirmed time and again, actually, over the course of the process. When we engaged with frontline staff, when we engaged with folks experiencing homelessness, when we engaged with broader community members, with business, with philanthropy, that was over and over again the message. We need to let people who are most impacted make the decisions about what happens. I'm concerned, frankly, with developments that move that power away from people. I think that there are a number of ways that, given the concerns that have been raised, that we could offer other kinds of policy fixes. But I want to be clear that not moving that power towards the Lived Experience Coalition, not moving that power towards people experiencing homelessness is out of integrity with the system that we built and out of integrity with the desires that the community expressed at all levels. I also want to be clear that I'm not sure what we're afraid of. I'm not sure what we're afraid of will happen if we give that power to people. I fundamentally believe, and I think that you all do as well, that the critiques that people experiencing homelessness have of the current system and the way that it has operated are valid. And so in lieu of any substantive point of disagreement about whether or not the critiques are valid, I don't know why we would not let people have their own seats at the table.
Thank you, Mark. You are at time. I'll give you a second to finish your thought.
I think that's it. And just, happy to see you all again.
Thank you, Mark. I will mute you. And up next we have Brittany Manzo. Brittany, give me 1 second while I unmute you and then you can start. All right, Brittany, you should be set to talk. Your 2 minutes will start as soon as you do.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Manzo. I know most of you, I've met with most of you. I'm close to some of you. I'm now a resident and a voter in Seattle, as well as an organizer with the Village of Hope and the Undoing Institutional Racism Collaborative, as well as the Director of Public Policy and Chief of Staff at the National Innovation Service. As Mark mentioned, when our team was brought in 2 years ago to chart the path toward a consolidated homelessness response, there was broad agreement that those with the most proximate knowledge of the problem needed to guide our solutions. That agreement led us here today, and it's critical that all of us members of the community, elected officials, and community representatives continue to lean into that understanding. I have been on my own journey. I worked in Washington, D.C. in government for 10 years. Over the last 3 to 4 years, I've been in a process of dismantling my own understandings of power and knowledge and expertise. And so I would ask that Mayor Durkin, Executive Constantine, members of the Seattle and King County councils, is that you trust the solutions to the challenges in front of you and ahead. Trust that they are that the solutions are still found closest to the problem. It is a journey to leaning into that. And I ask you today that you lean in and trust that the people who have experienced homelessness know best how to support other people experiencing homelessness. Trust moving power toward these leaders, Zanita, Kirk, Jonathan, and Karen, and the Lived Experience Coalition, heeding their advice and warnings, accommodating their needs to show up fully to these meetings. That will keep you all aligned to your principles and to your mission as the governing committee over the regional authority. Trust that if we create a homelessness response system that centers customer voice, then we will be able to focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities in order to end homelessness for all. Thank you all so much. It's a joy to be here with you today.
Thank you, Brittany. Next, we have Sheila Sabran. Sheila, 1 second while I unmute you. All right, Sheila, you should be good to go. Your time will start as when you do.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep, you are all set.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know many of you know me from various committees that I've been a part of for the last 15 years, the first 10 years of the 10-year plan, and with All Homes work and with the Lived Experience Coalition. And I have been watching from the sidelines for a long time, looking at the difference between civilian and military mindset. And for me, when I was in transitional housing at Sandpoint, I expected that there would be a next step to get me back on my feet. From that situation of homelessness, I didn't lose all the rest of me, all those capacities, all those abilities. What was missing was a pathway to my own self-sufficiency. And the thing about having peer-to-peer work is that you get step by step, how do I get out of where I am to where I'm going? It takes all of us. So it's a surprise to me that there's even a question about who's on the team to make sure that we're able to make homelessness, as we said before, rare, brief, and one time. And I want to point to our 4-year, maybe it was a 5-year plan that came out of the 10 years of work with the Committee to End Homelessness. And strategy 2.6 says create employment and education opportunities to support stability. We also had a measurement matrix on the progress that people make. But what is needed for that is an infrastructure of people who've been there, who help others make those steps. I looked at one meeting around the room, and there was a woman who came out from under a bridge to come to a Lived Experience Coalition meeting. And I watched her find her strength in herself and remember who she was, not just a person homeless. And that's why we need that infrastructure. And so I ask that we think about where are we headed and who should be on the team. It takes all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Next, we have Linda Mazer. Linda, 1 second while I unmute you.
Linda. Awesome.
Linda, you should be all set.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
So I am a registered voter in District 8, and I've been working with people who have experienced homelessness for probably about 20 years. And I have to say that when All Home came up with the theory of change that said we were going to create a homelessness response system that's centered on customer voice, it seemed to be a step in a new direction where we would really listen to people of color, people who are marginalized, people who have no voice in our system or the ways that we operate. And in the whole system of power and control, it's very easy for those of us who are used to privilege, assuming that everybody has a voice. But the reality is that most of the time, the people who are really experiencing homelessness are people of color, are people who are marginalized, are people who do not have a voice. And I was excited at the possibility that the way the Regional Homelessness Authority was first set up would lead to a whole new direction and a whole new centering of who is important. And I'm asking you to remember that, because I'm not seeing some of that in some of the deliberations I've seen so far. So please pay attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next, we have Joseph C. Joseph, 1 second while I unmute you. All right, Joseph, you should be good to go.
Thank you. This is Joseph Sia, Executive Director of the Pacific Islander Community Association and also the Chair of Undoing Institutional Racism Collaborative. I'm also a person of lived experience. I live in Berrien right now. And I am here to really lift up the dignity of people that have experienced homelessness, whether that's through humane policies that honor the leadership of those communities, most impacted communities, and the way that we honor that leadership and protect that dignity. I think it's due time that we shift away from paternalism. And it's funny because, you know, all other intersectional communities, queer people, Black people, Native people, Indigenous people, you know, we started on a movement to really lift up the dignity of those people, but somehow in a way that we design policy, we still dehumanize people that experience homelessness. And I think it's time for that to end. You know, I think homeless people know exactly the path to humanization, exactly the policies that they need to support, to make sure shelters, all of these interventions are not interventions that continue to dehumanize them. And so I'm here to support ending the paternalism towards lived experience members, to really honor and protect their dignity, and for everybody to just lean into that humanity, because that humanity is really what's going to take us forward. Thank you for the time, and hopefully everybody enjoys this weekend.
Thank you, Joseph. Next, we have Sydney Williams. Sydney, 1 second while I unmute you. You should be all set.
Hi, my name is Sydney Williams. I'm a resident of King County and a service provider for King County Rapid Rehousing Program. I've actually had the opportunity to work with a member of the governing committee who represents those with lived experience of homelessness. I can say that the perspective and honesty that those who have personal experience bring is invaluable to the work to solve homelessness and poverty for everyone. The governing committee has a golden opportunity to listen, not just hear, but actually listen to people who have been through or are currently living the problem we are all working to fix. I'm calling on you to not just hear, not just check a box, but really listen and value the input of the committee members with lived experience and the Lived Experience Coalition. I've found that to be successful in the work I do, trust is essential. To build and maintain trust, the commitment to follow through on the recommendations put forth by those with lived experience must be kept. I mean, otherwise it's just a waste of time and that trust may never be rebuilt. Demonstrate to King County that you are actually committed to ending homelessness by solidifying the decision-making power of those with personal experience into the bylaws. Increase the proportion of board seats reserved for those who have been or are homeless. Demonstrate to us that you are truly committed to solving homelessness by giving the Lived Experience Coalition the authority to decide who represents them on the governing committee. Vote in favor of the amendments the coalition has put forth today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Next, we have Lana Cressen. Lana, you should be all set.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're all good.
Great. Hi, my name is Lana Cressen, and I'm a voting resident of King County's 4th District. I'm here as a community member and anti-poverty advocate to urge you all to take the lead from the Lived Experience Coalition, starting by allowing them to select their representatives on the governance and implementation boards and voting yes on their proposed amendments. King County has been attempting to find solution for people experiencing homelessness and has failed to do so year after year. As you're still in the beginning stages of the Regional Homelessness Authority, you have a chance to reimagine and change how things are done. If King County continues to exclude the voices of those with lived experience, we will only perpetuate the status quo and the systems of oppression that uphold it so strongly. As someone who was a case manager for 7 years working with people who experienced homelessness in King County, I can tell you with certainty that the people with lived experience are the most important people to have on this board, and they should hold the most power. Please do not tokenize them. To make real progress, you must include the voices of those with lived experience in a much more meaningful way. I'm asking you to hold to the theory of change that outlined the creation of this authority by centering and honoring the voices of those with lived experience. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Liana. Next, we have Alex Bergstrom. Alex, you should be all set.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Alex Bergstrom. I am born and raised in Seattle. I'm a voter in King County. And I also want to stress the importance of the Lived Experience Coalition selecting its own representation on the governance and implementation boards. In my lifetime, at least, we've never gotten homelessness right in this county. And the only reason we've gotten this far with the current redesign is by listening to the expertise of the people who have lived at the intersection of our fractured systems. My understanding is that we're here trying to remove colonialism and racism from our government structures. They helped create homelessness in the first place, and exploiting the labor of the LEC by taking power back from them at this stage would undermine that mission, in my opinion. Also, please vote yes on amendments C and D proposed by the LEC. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Next, we have Laura Black. Laura, 1 second while I unmute you. Laura, you should be all set.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning. My name is Laura Black, and I'm a voting resident of King County's 43rd District, and I also work for a King County Rapid Rehousing Program. I have long heard the call to action in King County for a homelessness system to be designed for, by, and with people with lived experience of homelessness. With the creation of the new Regional Homelessness Authority, we now have an opportunity to do just that. And I am discouraged to hear that Lived Experience Coalition members are already experiencing marginalization within this new structure. This is a time to move past politics and business as usual, which so often contribute to systemic racism and oppression, and to instead truly and authentically share power with those most impacted by homelessness. A redesign of our homelessness system is long overdue, and our community is privileged to have leaders with lived experience sitting on this high-ranking committee. It is critical that we honor their experience and center their voices and perspectives throughout this process. I urge each of you to vote yes to the LEC proposed amendments today, and thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Laura. Next, we have Will. Will, 1 second as I unmute you. Will, you should be all set.
Good morning. My name is Will Cosburn. I'm a voting resident of King County and union staff at Solid Ground. It is critically important that we share power with those most impacted by homelessness. In order to create a system that works, we must center those most impacted and share power with communities most impacted in the governance, implementation, and evaluation of the new King County Regional Homelessness Authority. I ask that you all vote yes today regarding the amendments the LEC members are proposing. It is critical that people with lived experience have the autonomy and power to elect those that represent them. Any other method would be paternalistic, hypocritical, and reinforce systemic racism and oppression. Solid Ground, as a member of the provider community, knows that we all must do so much better to address the ongoing crisis of homelessness, poverty, and racism. The only way to come up with real solutions is by empowering, listening to, and most importantly, ensuring those most impacted by the homelessness, poverty, racism, and other forms of oppression are able to take their power back, especially in this governing authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. Next, we have Harold Odom. Harold, 1 second while I unmute you. Harold, you should be all set. Harold, are you able to unmute yourself?
There I go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you are all good.
Okay. All right, good. I didn't check the box there. I'm sorry. Speaking of checking boxes, Executive Dow Constantine, you're an Eagle Scout, president of your class, law school graduate, top of class. But what if I just categorize you as this, a DJ? Not saying a DJ at university, but just a DJ. That's how you marginalize someone, taking something that they've had in their life and just focusing on that. Lived experience are people who come from a vast variety of life, and we have lived experience, hard experience, and we've learned from it, educated ourselves. We've come out of situations, and we want to help other people as well. Mayor Ginny Durkin, a couple of meetings ago, you were poignant about asking about implementation board members. Was there someone of LGBTQ plus on that board? Why? Because it's close to your heart. You have that lived experience. You know the criticism, you know the racism, you know the spectacle that people go through just to live their lives. We ask this governing board support the lived experience amendments, not only with your heart, but take away from your past experience and come to the table honestly, truthfully with what you see. The past has led to more people dying on the street, homelessness growing, and we need to find solutions that work, not just beating up the same eggs and serving them for leftovers to another group of people. We need to be true to ourselves and true to the people who are less fortunate than we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Next, we have Danielle Coleman. Danielle, 1 second. Danielle, you should be good to start talking.
Hi, my name is Danielle Coleman. I also am born and raised in Seattle. I'm a voter in King County District 2. I wanted to speak today to urge all of you that it's so important that the Lived Experience Coalition is able to select its members to represent them on this governance and implementation board. And I really urge you to vote yes on Amendments C and D proposed by the LEC. I also wanted to honor the leadership of Ms. Karen Taylor, who is a pillar in the community and whose wisdom and expertise is absolutely invaluable to your governance and implementation boards. And I don't know if you realize how lucky you are to have her expertise with you. I want to let you know your voters are paying attention, and we believe that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. We trust the knowledge of those who are part of the Lived Experience Coalition, and we believe that you should as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Next, we have Luther Mitchell Walker. Luther, 1 second while I unmute you. Luther, you should be all set.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me this morning?
Yeah, you're all good.
All right. Hello. My name is Luther Mitchell Walker, and I'm a voting member. I live in Seattle, Washington. I have been homeless. I've worked with homelessness in the community of Seattle, and I have also worked in housing and supportive housing in the community. And I've also dealt with people that have barriers of criminal backgrounds. And I just want to bring that to light, that people with these barriers and challenges that are faced with homelessness have it harder when it comes to dealing with these continuances and problems that are happening in the court system due to this virus that's happening now. And I just want to make it aware when you guys are voting for this amendment, in hopes that you guys think about the people that have barriers and challenges and find ways to helping the disparity in that and supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Luther. I wanted to flag that we are at the end of scheduled public comment. We have 2 more people in the queue that we will go through. That is, next we have Juanita Spotted Elk, and we will end with Bill Carlin Hackett. So Juanita, 1 second while I unmute you. All right, you should be good. Juanita, are you able to unmute yourself?
Oh, sorry. Am I unmuted now?
Yep, you are all good. Feel free to start.
Okay, thank you. My name's Juanita Spotted Elk. I'm a Northern Cheyenne tribal member. I'm a part of the indigenous community in this area, in this Northwest Territory. I'm also part of the Lived Experience Coalition. And I just want to bring honor and bring sacredness back to this table. And I say that with all my heart. And to honor one is the honor of all. And I thank you for your service. And I'm just grateful to be here, to be a voice that represents many. I'm grateful to Lamont and all the work of all the All Home team that have made a space for us to have a voice in the time when my life was broken. Hope, they brought hope into my life and into my heart. And I'm very grateful. And it saved my life, I believe. And I was able to get a home for me and my children. And I just know that when there's hope, love, and sacredness and honor, that everyone is able to get all our needs met and to have a home and to be able to live a life that has quality. And I'm just here to share my experience at this table, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity. And I just want to bring gratitude into this room, into this space. And I trust that everyone will make good decisions, because I believe that if it wasn't for the support of the coalition, I believe that there would be no governance board or any of this new regional King County authority. And I'm just grateful to be a part of this work. And I ask that you would hear and listen and honor the words of the LEC with the lived experience, and approve the amendments that they have brought to this table. And I just thank everyone for being here. I appreciate all the good words of the community, and I just want to thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Juanita. Yeah, thank you very much. And we will finish with Bill Carlin Hackett. Bill, you should be good to go.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Juanita, and all the prior commenters about the Lived Experience Coalition's proper place. I echo Mark's initial comment on this, that this is actually the best plan that we've put forth, at least on paper. I was part of the writing of the Committee to End Homelessness Plan, the All Home. This is the best that we've done so far. I just have two comments. One is that I notice on the implementation board, as I read the bios, I don't see a veteran, and I'm a little concerned we don't have direct veteran coverage there, since they're so active in doing so much of what's involved. And also to the Lived Experience Coalition, I would encourage you, not so much putting people on the board, but to make sure you pay attention to vehicle residents who make up 49% of the unsheltered. It's a lost voice in every system we have right now. And it's a unfortunately lost voice, because they are an important voice in terms of trying to find those pathways to stability and housing that I know you stand for. So I would just encourage you, and I do support changes you want to make. The theory of change has to govern. Thank you, all of you. Please do the best you can and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That concludes public comment. We had a request to speak from Karen Taylor. Karen?
Yes, I just wanted to know if there were other people left in the public comment. If so, I think that the principles of this work and our theory of change need to be centered in this moment, and request that we extend this period of public comment by an additional 15 minutes.
We don't currently have anyone else signed up. No one else is in the chat box to speak. So we've gone through our allotted folks who have signed up to speak for public comment, and we do have a lot on the agenda to cover. So I'd appreciate it if we would press on.
As long as there's nobody else in public comment, I believe then that would be just fine. Just wanting to make sure that everybody's voice is heard, because this is such a serious and important subject. So as long as there's nobody else.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And with that, we're going to go to the consideration of implementation board appointees. Aaron.
Thank you, Chair Prince, and to all the members of the committee. My name is Erin Aria, and I am central staff to the King County Council. Today, I will be presenting on the appointment to fill the final open position on the implementation board. This material has also been included in the meeting packet for your information. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing. Next slide, please. As you will recall, the governing committee received a briefing last month on the implementation board. This briefing included an overview of the expertise and characteristics that the members of the implementation board must hold collectively, as prescribed in the ILA. As determined at the last meeting, the 12 board members that you previously seated collectively meet the obligations set forth in the ILA. At that meeting, the committee took action to confirm all 12 of the appointed nominees with one seat outstanding. Today, I will present for your consideration the nominee to serve in the 13th seat on the implementation board. Next slide, please. The King County Council appoints Michael Ramos to the implementation board. Michael currently serves as the executive director of the Church Council of Greater Seattle, a position he's held for 12 years. His approach is to bring a faith lens to his work with people and communities experiencing marginalization, including the Latinx community in Oakland, housed and unhoused Central American refugees in Seattle, and unhoused residents in Tacoma. The Church Council has long been active in service to King County residents, and Michael's leadership includes overseeing direct service programs, advocating for equitable resources across the continuum of care throughout King County, and focusing on the intersection of homelessness and the lack of affordable housing. The expertise Michael brings with him fulfill the ILA requirements of fiscal oversight, homelessness service provision, and youth services. And that concludes my presentation. Chair Prince, I'll turn it back over to you for discussion.
Are there any comments, any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. As we've heard, Michael has experience working for years with people in our region and people who live here in King County, and particularly marginalized people. And it's particularly his understanding of intersectionality that's going to be so vital to our work that has me excited about his willingness to serve on the implementation board. And of course, he brings the connection to faith and faith community in really the best possible way. His approach reaches across faith traditions and seeks to connect us, not to divide us. I really appreciate his willingness to serve and ask you to join me in supporting and appointing Michael to the implementation board.
And for the folks that are on the phone, and I'm remiss in doing this, that was Councilmember Joe McDermott. When you speak, if you can say your name so that the people on the phone can know who's speaking, that'd be great. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move we appoint Michael Ramos to the implementation board.
Second.
Then moved by Joe McDermott, seconded by Lorena Gonzalez, that we appoint Michael Ramos to the implementation board. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Oh,
aye.
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Everything here. Sarah, roll call.
Nancy Backus. Angela Burney.
Aye.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn.
Aye.
Jenny Durkin,
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez,
Aye.
Jonathan Hemphill, Karen Taylor,
Aye. Aye.
Andrew Lewis,
Aye.
Kirk McLean,
Aye.
Joe McDermott,
Aye.
Ed Prince,
Aye.
Zanita Reed.
Aye.
That is
right.
11 ayes.
The ayes have it. All right. Congratulations to Michael for being appointed to the implementation board. Next up, we've got a staff update on the CEO hiring process and timeline. Briefing by Leo Floor, Jason Johnson.
Thank you so much. This is Jason Johnson with the Human Services Department of the City of Seattle. Thank you all for your support and leadership. It has allowed the City of Seattle to contract with Hawkins to lead the recruitment process that will find us a CEO of the King County Regional Homeless Authority. Christine Boulevard from Hawkins is with us today to introduce herself, to provide some initial updates about their experience and this particular process, and to answer your question. Welcome, Christine.
You're on mute, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Prince. Good morning, everybody. My name is Christine Boulware, and I am representing the Hawkins Company, and we are delighted to have been retained by this phenomenal organization to do this very important search. We have experience. We've just, across the country, we've just completed a similar kind of role for the Los Angeles Homelessness Authority, and feel that we bring a great deal of expertise, insight, and knowledge. So we look forward to meeting all of you in all the various ways that that's going to be possible. The first steps in our process are going to be to meet with, the wide range of key stakeholders that are going to be involved, and we can do that in a number of different ways. We're sort of scheduling the meeting with the evaluation committee next week to outline the approach that we would like to assume and sort of get their support and guidance around that. But the outreach piece of it is critically important to the launch of the search, because it really helps us to understand all of the unique aspects of this community. It helps us understand the history of everything related to the creation of this organization, and it helps us to understand, frankly, the culture of this community. We've done a fair amount of work in the city, for the City of Seattle and for King County, so we are not unfamiliar. We're based in Los Angeles, but we never presume that we know everything. Do you know what I mean? And we find that our best learning takes place when we get a chance to talk with people from the sort of the wide stakeholder group. We are particularly interested in sort of the lived experience community, the coalition, however that community is being represented. We find that people with lived experience have an invaluable, frankly, sort of perspective. It's very important to us to appreciate that, so that when we look for people as potential candidates to lead this organization, that they too have a deep appreciation for the core values. So our first step is going to be a sort of a comprehensive outreach to the key stakeholder community in a variety of different ways. At our evaluation meeting, we're going to outline the proposed timeline and get their approval, which I know they will then be widely shared. And in addition to sort of the affirmation of the process that we are going to use. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you so much, Christine. I do just want to add one point of clarification. Mark Dones and NIS did substantial community engagement to develop an initial draft of a CEO job description, and to really understand what potential examples of structures that CEO would exist in. And I think, when Christine and Hawkins talks about community engagement, it will be building on the work that NIS has completed, not replicating or starting over. And so we have a good foundation for both the job description as well as some role description of the CEO. And just wanted to add that, Christine, thank you so much. Welcome. I know that you're committed to building on that body of work, deeply engaged, community-informed body of work that took place over the last year and a half. And we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions that I might respond to?
Angela Burney.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that description. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you for taking this on. So as you're doing the outreach for the stakeholder groups, because I come from outside of the city of Seattle on the east side, I just want to make sure that in your work that you reach out to all of the kind of dispersed areas of King County as well, from the northeast, south, to make sure you get a really broad perspective. And that's all. Otherwise, I'm very excited to hear how this process goes. I'm really excited to have you aboard. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And you should know that the key stakeholder list of organizations and individuals will be a list generated, I do believe, by at least the evaluation committee and probably others. And so we are going to be guided by whatever, sort of, and make sure that we extend ourselves to all to the broadest range of stakeholders as we possibly can.
Sure. Karen Taylor.
I would just like to know, what date will the CEO actually be hired?
That is a great question, Karen. We don't exactly know just yet because we are literally just beginning, but our target time frame is sort of in the November period.
Any other questions from the committee for Christine?
Yeah, I had a quick comment, not so much a question. Hello, Christine. It's very nice to meet you. This is Kirk McLean from the Lived Experience Coalition. Just want to say welcome, and we appreciate your hard work on finding a CEO for us. And we also appreciate the fact that you are including the lived experience aspect to this, and that the CEO will have, hopefully will have a very strong a position on that. And how he or she moves forward. With the Lived Experience Coalition, we are committed to moving forward in this group with racial equity. And that's why we're here. We're representing a whole bunch of people who can't be here to speak up for themselves, who are homeless and marginalized. So we appreciate the work you've done. And we look forward to even meeting with you if that's possible, just to make sure that we have an understanding of who we're picking to choosing to lead our group. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Absolutely. Thank you for the welcome.
If there are no other comments, we're going to move forward. Okay. Thank you so much, Christine. Next up, we've got the initial staffing plan. Leo?
Actually, hi, it's Jason. I'll get us started. Good morning again. Each of you were provided with a memo outlining the decisions needed today, as well as an updated timeline of activities to stand up operations of the King County Regional Homeless Authority. Those decisions: one, whether the King County Regional Homeless Authority CEO, after having been hired, may recruit and hire to form an initial leadership team as an intermediate step before completing the governing committee approved full staffing plan. And decision two, whether the CEO and the city of Seattle and King County, ahead of the hiring of a CEO under oversight of the implementation board, may have access to the initial startup budget made available by the city and the county, consistent with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, ILA, for actions necessary to begin operations at the King County Regional Homeless Authority. Just for some context on why we're bringing this to you today, the ILA states hiring following the submission of this staffing plan by the CEO. The staffing plan, designed by the CEO and approved by the governing committee and implementation board, is to be completed within the first 60 days of the CEO hire. This interim or initial staffing plan offers the opportunity to approve and begin staffing and creating needed structures for the regional authority ahead of the CEO being hired, and really ahead of the CEO's submission of that critical staffing plan. The ILA offers clear roles for approval. We're putting this forward in front of you and to the implementation board, given that the CEO is not currently on board, and that the regional authority needs to purchase services such as employee benefits and systems such as payroll and financial services. The budget amounts have already been approved and made available through the city and county 2020 budgeting process. This action simply authorizes use of those funds, again, ahead of a CEO being hired, but also authorizes the CEO, when hired, to begin bringing on employees and building their team before the overall staffing plan is submitted. Leo, any other context or information you want to offer ahead of discussion, questions, and the vote?
Thank you, Jason. Just reinforcement of the fact that we are seeking authorization prior to the CEO's being hired, but it is the CEO who will exercise that hiring. And then just to echo and reinforce what Jason mentioned, that the purpose here is as we take a look at the timeline for the 60-day hiring plan, it takes a full 60 days, and then it takes a month of consideration by the implementation board and governing committee, and then a hiring process were to take 4 weeks at the fastest, but likely 6 to 8 weeks. We would be at 5 months from the CEO's hire date to the date at which the CEO would be able to hire the second employee of King County Regional Homelessness Authority. And we have made a planning assumption that the CEO would benefit from having human resources, for example, or a CFO, or even a scheduler who could help them really hit the ground running in that first 5 months before the full staffing plan is ready. So this is a constrained and limited hiring authority to help them get to the point where they can propose for governing committee review and implementation board approval the final staffing plan.
Angela Burney, you have a question.
I do. Thank you. Thanks for that description. I'm trying to go back in my mind to last year when we were talking about some of the concerns from the public about how this organization will be staffed to not create more people, more of another organization. Even though Seattle and King County have their own right now, we're trying to merge the two. So can you kind of help me? I totally understand the startup and making sure it's ready to run when the CEO comes on board, but how is that transition coming from the two current organizations to this? Are they brand new positions? Are they going to be choosing from the individuals that are already staffing those other current organizations? Can you give me a little bit of that information just from a bigger picture standpoint for me?
Thank you, Mayor Burney. I can start and then Jason can jump in. So the position that King County is in, and I believe the city of Seattle is as well, is that no current employee of the city of Seattle or King County who occupies a role that will be transferred, whose function will be transferred to the new authority, none of those employees have a guaranteed assignment into the new authority. The authority will run its own hiring processes. There are limited circumstances in which we might, as our HR teams are planning, quote unquote, temporarily loan an employee whose function is essential before the new authority can hire a replacement. An example of that would be performance management and data systems that operate the homeless management information system, for example, that if hiring at the new authority for those types of positions is not something that would be accomplished until the third quarter of 2021, that we might loan a county employee who does that work now to the new authority for operational control until the new authority can make the hire. And then we have issued at King County notices of intent to lay off for the staff who currently do the work that will eventually migrate to the new authority. And then just to, I suppose, recognize the fact that that staff continues to do difficult work, knowing that their jobs are subject to eventual layoff. And we're grateful to them for continuing to provide that public service.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, thank you, Leo, is that, we have incredibly talented, dedicated experts working at both DCHS and HSD. And those employees, I think, are well positioned to apply for and successfully receive positions at the regional authority. But there is going to need to be, under the leadership of the CEO, a process by which that organization hires its own staff. So this is not going to be as Leo mentioned, a process where we simply transition existing staff over to the regional authority. Regional authority will need to make hiring decisions for positions that they create to operate the authority and continue this good work. But again, we have great expertise inside of the city and the county teams, and I think they're well positioned to successfully apply for and receive positions with the new authority if that's something they choose.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question. I really appreciate it.
Anita Reed.
Yeah, so in just thinking of that and the CEO hiring process and the interim staffing plans, it just has significant implications for homeless service providers right now and people experiencing homelessness, and then continued services and funding in addition to lives and livelihood of staff. How is that going to affect, the daily services and things like that are currently to come?
Really good questions. Thank you, Zanita. So Leo and I are both prepared to execute 2021 contracts for our community-based organizations inside of the city and county teams. And so we want to make sure that the funding continuation, service continuity is in place. And, I think originally when, last year and early this year, we had really contemplated and hoped that there would be the ability for the regional authority to take on the contracting function effective January 1st. That is no longer possible. We really need the CEO on board and need them to guide exactly when that organization is ready to manage contracts. So Leo and I and the teams behind us are going to be in a position to execute 2021 contracts with our community-based organization so that the work continues. And then we plan a migration of those programs, of those contracted programs, over to the regional authority, likely in the first quarter of 2021.
How have the current staff been involved in these processes? Have they been involved in the talkings and what is going on?
Yeah, thank you. In the first quarter of this year, we had staff work groups that also included participation by the Lived Experience Coalition that really defined what program migration could look like, as well as another of important operational details. And so Leo and I are really using those plans created by staff and lived experience to help us map out exactly what this program migration or contract migration can look like. And so we're, I'm sure I could speak for Leo here and just say how grateful we are for the staff's work to map that out for us. And it is that work and really taking that body of work and comparing it to the timeline for a number of really important operational details that made us realize that we are not going to be in a position to transition contracts immediately, January 1st, 2021, and instead need to execute those contracts and transition those programs in a thoughtful way during the first quarter of next year.
And just to elaborate on that, what the committee has before it is what we've called a macro timeline that shows in sort of big blocks, periods over which, phases of migration of programming will happen. What we have, and it was produced, as Jason mentioned, by a staff leadership team that, was composed of contract holders and then with participation from the Lived Experience Coalition. What they produced between November and March of last year and March of this year is a version of this timeline, but that starts to get to the contract by contract, program by program level. And the real value there is that it identified what is literally hundreds of interdependencies between contracts. And it lets us then set in place a much more detailed sequence to say, in order for this contract to move, the staff that will have to conduct that or to manage that contract must be in place at the new authority, and that program must have moved before we're able to move another program. And we're able to set that against things like RFP dates, funding years from the various different funding sources, federal, local, state grants. And then it renders a much more detailed operational plan that we at King County and the city of Seattle are now adapting to the larger macro timeline that you have before you today, committee members.
Any other questions for Jason or Leo?
Yes, I do. Sorry. Can
you, for the folks on the phone, can you say your name so that they know who's talking?
Yeah, this is Anita Reed, Lived Experience Coalition. And just listening to everything that you're saying and understanding that there are staff that are going to be laid off. And I'm just wondering how, and I hear you say people are involved in this process, but have they, like the theory of change and making sure they know exactly what is going to go on? Because if we're delaying the hiring of the CEO, and they're not coming on till November, that just doesn't give a lot of time for those that will be ending their jobs in December, and to help support the new regional authority. I'm sure in just experiences that we've had so far, with the pandemic and things like that. So I'm just wondering if we have thought about that, and those staff have they been involved in that process in a smooth transition for them as well?
Thank you, Zanita. We have thought about it extensively. I also don't pretend that it is perfect. What may not be transparent to folks is that the same staff we're talking about now are the same staff that have been operating isolation and quarantine facilities, the same staff that have been operating expansion shelters. This is a group of people, that are tremendous public servants, are tremendously busy, and this is a portion, but not all of their work. So we are working with them using the plan that they produced earlier in the year. And I think, and this is what you were getting to, Zanita, we are now having to adapt that initial plan that did not account for COVID and all of the activity that came with it. We're having to adapt that initial plan and then set it into a new timeline that frankly has us further into this year on a CEO hire than we thought we would be at the beginning of this year when the interlocal agreement was freshly signed. So we are working through that. And then the other piece of this that I think we have to acknowledge is that we work through providers in our system, and we have well more than 100 of them in the overall system. And the thing that we have ahead of us now is really to resynchronize with a set of providers that are actually doing the work in the community, both longstanding and newly contracted ones to make sure that they are also aware of and have a chance to provide feedback on the timeline that we're setting in place. And so the balance that we are striking here is involvement of folks with lived experience, involving with folks who do the work as staff within the agency, and then involvement of folks who do the work out in the community as providers, and providing clarity, and then having an opportunity for them to problem solve or issue spot, reincorporating all of that, putting it out as a plan that now accounts for the fact that we are planning on a CEO hire that will be at the earliest in October. And as you heard from the Hawkins group, likely to land now in November, which is something that you see reflected on the updated macro timeline before the committee this morning.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'll accept a motion on this item.
I moved this item. I think it was, there were two parts. So Leo, do you want it to be done together or just the whole plan itself?
We would certainly defer to the committee, Madam Mayor, but if there's no controversy and we can move both of them at once, that would certainly work for staff's perspective.
Okay, so this is Angela Burney from Sound Cities. I would move to approve the limited interim hiring plan and startup costs for the CEO. Or just the interim hiring plan, excuse me.
Is there a second?
This is Lorena Gonzalez from Seattle. I will second.
All right, it's been moved by Angela and seconded by Lorena that we approve the interim staffing plan. Although, Sarah, we call roll.
Nancy Backus. Angela Burney.
Aye.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn. Jenny Durkin.
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez.
Aye.
Jonathan Hemphill. And Karen Taylor in place. Apologies. Karen Taylor in place of Jonathan Hemphill.
Yeah, what happened?
I'm having trouble hearing your vote.
I would have to say I need more information.
Would that be an abstention?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, abstention. Great. Karen Taylor for Jonathan Hemphill abstains. Andrew Lewis.
Yes.
Kirk McLean.
I abstain, but I would also like to make a request. I thought your presentation, Leo, and was great, and I appreciate the timeline that we are working with. It's obviously a tough one, but you said you were working with over 100 groups out in the community that are going to be doing this work. How are you going to make sure that the theory of change is applied to what they do and how they do it? Are they, have there been any discussions about moving forward with a racial equity lens as far as how they do their work? Has there been any meetings about that? I get that the process is complicated and it's shortened because of the CEO hire timeline, but if I could get something in writing, if we could get something in writing to show that you guys have been having those conversations with these groups, that'd be good for me. But at this point, I'm going to abstain.
Leo, can you get something, Leo or Jason, can you guys get something to the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and just to confirm, Kirk, your request to make sure I understand, is the question is whether in our transition planning, we are seeking or requiring adherence to centering of persons with lived experience in the performance of their existing contracts.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. My question was mostly regarding how the groups that we're working with. I mean, obviously, when the CEO gets here, he's going to have to hire some people, correct? How are you guys going to translate or get these groups to do what they do, these outside groups, with racial equity in their process? I mean, how's that going to happen? And you said you're going to have to hire some folks, right? I get that part, but where is the process where the theory of change is in there as far as who you hire and how they do their work? That's kind of what I'm talking about. I don't know if I'm confusing you or not, but that's just how it's looking in my head. Can you?
I think I can try to offer an answer, Kirk. The one, I do think that is a question that is before the governing committee and the implementation board in who you choose to hire as the CEO. I think the engagement process, the job description, to the extent that they capture or do not capture, and then certainly the interview process should really help control for who you choose to hire for the new authority. To clarify, the proposal that we are putting for you today is not for the city of Seattle or for King County to hire anybody. It is to provide authorization from the governing committee to the newly hired CEO, whoever they are, for them to hire an initial staff group. And then I think that one of the most exciting things from our perspective about the entire regional authority is that it gives an opportunity for a new organization, new leadership to implement practices in terms of RFPs, contracting, hiring that embody and require the exact things that you are talking about. So the transition that we're making is what will allow that change to happen or set the conditions for a new leader to make those changes.
Okay, I got that. Thank you.
We will continue with the roll call vote. Kirk McLean, you had abstained. Next, we have Joe McDermott.
Aye.
Ed Prince.
Aye.
Zanita Reed.
I'll abstain.
And then we had some audio issues with Reagan Dunn earlier. Reagan.
Thanks. Yeah, Reagan Dunn. I had to call back in, and I vote aye.
Thank you. 1 second while I tally these. We have 8 ayes, 3 abstentions.
Did you get, this is Jenny Durkin. Did you get my aye?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So motion carries. Next up is consideration of the committee bylaws, briefing by Tess. Tess, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Prince. Good morning, everybody. So I am going to provide I'm sorry, I should introduce myself. I'm Tess Colby, and I am staff of Mayor Durkin's office. So today I plan to set up the committee's discussion on the proposed bylaws through a really brief presentation. And I'll start, Sarah, with the next slide. So the bylaws, the purpose of the bylaws that are before you today are to establish the procedures by which the governing committee will operate. So much of the operational guidance for this committee is in the ILA. The bylaws themselves reference those ILA sections when appropriate. So for example, committee composition and terms are in the ILA. Frequency of governing committee meetings is also in the ILA, and quorum is defined in the ILA. And so if we can go to the second slide. To give you a sense of the process that we went through for preparing the bylaws and presenting them to you today, there was a subgroup of the staffing work group that met 4 times. And the staff representatives on that group, the people on that group were staff representatives from each of the elected offices, as well as the lived experience governance committee members. Deanna Gregory, who was very involved in the development of the interlocal agreement, provided the initial draft for us to guide the discussions, but the discussions and future drafts, amendments to it were really driven by predominantly that subgroup of the staff working group. The group came to agreement to submit the bylaws that you have before you, most of which reflect general agreement, but the dissension or disagreement where we realized we could not come to consensus resulted in amendments that are before you as well. Sarah, can you go to the next one? The bylaws that are before you supplement the interlocal agreement with some additional operating guidance. For example, some of the guidance that's not the specific guidance that's not in the ILA, but are, that's not in the ILA, but are in the bylaws are the appointment of alternates. And that section is the subject of Amendment A, which we will get to in a bit. Governing committees and chairs are also in the bylaws, further description of how that, the process of that and how those work. Those are the subject of Amendment E. There are rules for holding executive sessions. There's application of the Open Meeting Act, and then there's discussion of setting agenda and distribution of materials. Agenda is addressed in Amendment E and distribution of materials in Amendment D. Next slide, please. So there are 5 amendments that are before you, and I will give a brief overview of each of the amendments for reference for the committee discussion. As a reminder, you have a copy of the staff report, the bylaws, and the amendments in the bylaws packet that was sent out to all committee members. The first amendment, Amendment A, is presented to you by City Council members Lewis and Gonzalez and Mayor Durkin. And it amends Section 2.04, which is the section that talks, Section 2.04 in the bylaws that addresses alternates. The amendment would allow each member of the governing committee to appoint an alternate to serve in the absence of the governing committee member. So presently, the bylaws limit alternates to governing committee members who represent lived experience. This amendment would also provide that the King County Executive and the Seattle Mayor may appoint alternates from their respective executive teams. And I'll go to the next amendment. Thanks. So Amendment B is also presented to you by the City Council members Gonzalez and Lewis and Executive Constantine and Mayor Durkin. This amendment adds a new section 4.05 that sets a higher voting threshold than that required by the interlocal agreement. That threshold would be needed to amend budgets, amend goals, amend policies, and plans, and so that were developed and recommended by the implementation board. The voting threshold for those amendments the voting threshold for those amendments to the budget policy plans is set in the proposed bylaw amendment as an affirmative vote of at least 8 members of the governing committee. Presently, those amendments in the ILA are set at 2/3 of the members present. So that would be affirmative votes of the range between 6 and 8 members. All right, next. Amendment C is presented by the members of the governing committee members representing lived experience, Jonathan Hemphill, Zanita Reed, and Kirk McLean. And it amends Article 2, which is the article that addresses governing committee membership, and Article 4, which addresses meetings of the governing committee. So this amendment adds language that the Lived Experience Coalition shall select the members with lived experience who shall be appointed by the advisory committee to the governing committee. It also provides that the lived experience members will serve for 24 months or until they're replaced by the Lived Experience Coalition, and they will serve up to 3 terms. It provides that vacancies will be filled in the same way as the original appointment per the bylaws. Next slide, please. And it further provides that the lived experience members will have 3 alternates appointed pursuant to the bylaws to serve on behalf of any of the lived experience members, and that a quorum is 9 members selected pursuant to the bylaws. All right, and the next amendment is also presented by the governing committee members representing lived experience. So again, Jonathan Hemphill, Zanita Reed, and Kirk McLean. And this amendment, this is an amendment of section 4.04, which is conduct of business. This requires that the CEO provide agenda, previous meeting minutes, and other meeting materials 7 days in advance of any regular meeting. It also requires that the authority staff will be responsive to the needs of lived experience members and their staff. Next, please. The final amendment, Amendment E, is proposed by mayors, by the Sound Cities Association's mayors Angela Burney, Nancy Backus, and Councilmember Ed Prince. This amends Article 3 of the Governing Committee officers and committees and Article 4 of the meetings of Governing Committee. This amendment would establish a 4-member executive committee limited to 4 co-chairs, 1 each from lived experience, King County, Seattle, and the SCA. The executive committee would ensure that business is transacted in accordance with the law, the interlocal agreement, and the bylaws. And the executive committee would develop processes related to chairing meetings, rotation of chairs, calling special meetings, setting agenda with the CEO, and proposing other subcommittees. So that concludes the overview of the amendments. We will return back to Amendment A, and I will turn this over to Chair Prince for committee discussion. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Any discussion by the committee?
Perhaps this is an opportunity for the sponsors to speak to the amendments.
Yeah, let's start with Amendment A.
And Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Lewis here from the city of Seattle for those listening on the phone line. I move Amendment A.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Angela Burney.
Thank you. So the comment I have on this is that while we were working through bringing the ILA together, we thought it was extremely important for the elected officials to be the one person representing themselves and their groups. And that's part of their job as being committed to this work and keeping the same set of people in this group working together so they have all the information. I absolutely support the lived experience individuals having alternates, and I know their alternates are also paying attention and participating in all of this, and I think that's extremely important because they're adding this on to their regular lives. It's not part of their job. But as for elected officials, I think it's extremely important that the elected officials that are appointed remain part of this. And I would prefer not to have anyone else as an alternate for those positions.
Thank you, Angela. Andrew.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate Mayor Bernie's comments just now. I too value the consistency of having the same group of elected officials present. I would say in the case of our two executive members, Executive Constantine and Mayor Durkin, just the multiplicity of duties before them, the possibility that we could have a situation where they are called away by some emergency or some other issue that requires the attention of the most critical executives in the Puget Sound region, I think does necessitate some conversation about them being able to be represented in the event that, through incapacity or some unavoidable conflict, they cannot be present. I can say from my personal experience, directly to respond to the very real concerns that Mayor Bernie just voiced, and that I'll admit that I share as well. I've interacted on many occasions in my first year on the council with deputy mayors, Fong, Six Killer, and Ranganathon here at the city of Seattle. I've never had any doubt that they were speaking with the full authority of Mayor Durkin and in close consultation with the concerns, the needs, and the perspective that Mayor Durkin brings to city government and would bring to this body. I just think it's important to make sure that we allow those voices to still be present, just given how critical the cooperation of the King County Executive and the Mayor of Seattle will be to these proceedings. And in the event that they should want to substitute a deputy mayor to participate in these proceedings, I think that is just important to provide the continuity and make sure that their interests are represented in the event that they cannot personally attend. So that is the spirit in which this is introduced, and I would urge the committee to support it.
Tess, I have a process question. Did you want us to adopt the underlining bylaws first and then deal with the amendments?
That is an excellent question. Yes, I suppose from a process perspective, that is the best way to proceed. Since these amendments all are amending the document that has actually been presented to you.
So Andrew, I know you have a motion on the floor. Would you kindly withdraw it so that we can adopt the underlying bylaws and then we can come back to your motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And if you need me to re-motion, Mr. Chair, just let me know, and I'm happy to do it that way as well.
Lorraine.
I do hereby withdraw my motion to move Amendment A.
Sorry, hi for those listening. This is Lorena Gonzalez from Seattle. I'm forever a parliamentarian as current president of the city council. So I'm fine with making a motion. I think process-wise, I think it would be appropriate to make a motion to put the bylaws before us and then consider the amendments. But I feel uncomfortable voting for bylaws that have not yet been amended. So my proposal is to make a motion to put the bylaws before the governing committee for adoption, with the understanding that we have several amendments to walk through, and then call a final roll call on the bylaws as amended at the conclusion of our consideration of amendments A through E.
I am totally fine with that. And if you want to make that motion, bringing the bylaws in front of us, I'll accept that.
I make a motion that the governing committee approve the bylaws.
This is Angela Bernie, I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
So I think now Councilmember Lewis can reintroduce Amendment A.
Yes, he can.
Yeah, and strictly speaking, maybe I should have moved to table instead of withdraw. But in any event, I remove Amendment A for the consideration of the body.
Second.
All right. Amendment A has been moved by Andrew and seconded by Lorena. Is there any discussion on Amendment A? Any additional discussion on Amendment A? Okay. Seeing none, I take a roll call vote on Amendment A.
Nancy Backus, Angela Burney,
Nay.
Dow Constantine,
Aye.
Reagan Dunn,
Nay.
Jenny Durkin,
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jonathan Hemphill, Karen Taylor, Karen, I know you were having some audio issues, so I'll reach out to you in the chat. Andrew Lewis,
Yes.
Kirk McLean,
Yes.
Joe McDermott, Joe McDermott,
Aye.
Ed Prince,
Nay.
Zanita Reed,
Aye.
and I just received in the chat Karen Taylor's vote is an aye on Jonathan Hemphill's behalf. 1 second while I tally these.
Sarah, this is Dow Constantine. I want to confirm that you recorded my aye vote.
I did. Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
That is 8 ayes, 3 nays.
All right, the ayes have it. Is there a motion for Amendment B? Lorena.
Thank you, Ed. This is Lorena Gonzalez from Seattle. I move that the governing committee adopt Amendment B, which would add a new section 4.05 to the bylaws that would include the voting requirements for actions by the governing committee that are identical to those in the ILA with 2 modifications that I'm happy to describe and discuss if I receive a second.
Is there a
This is
second?
Jenny Durkin, I second.
Who seconded?
Jenny.
All right,
I
it's been moved
think
by
Kirk did too.
Lorena. It's been moved by Lorena and seconded by Jenny to move Amendment B. Is there any discussion?
May I make
Go ahead,
supporting comments? Thank you so much, Ed. Lorena Gonzalez again for the viewing public. The 2 modifications proposed in this Amendment B, as previously described by Tess Colby from the Mayor's Office, would do 2 things. One, this amendment would require an affirmative vote of at least 8 governing committee members to amend, and only for amendments, to the following things: the annual budget as developed and recommended by the implementation board. And it would also require an affirmative vote of 8 governing committee members to amend the goals, policies, and plans developed and recommended by the implementation board. So I believe it is the governing committee's responsibility to affirm the professional and data-driven work of the experts on the implementation board, which of course now we have 100% appointment of with today's vote this morning. The implementation board, which should be insulated from political considerations, is tasked with developing the annual budget and the goals, policies, and plans of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, among other items. In the hopefully rare event that the governing committee votes to amend the budgets, goals, policies, or plans developed by the implementation board, I believe it is critical that the governing committee has a high level of agreement to take the action of amending the implementation board's recommendations around those points. So towards that end, I along with Councilmember Lewis, Mayor Durkin, and Executive Constantine, we're proposing Amendment B, which will ensure that we work to achieve such agreement amongst this group if we are going to effectively supersede the work of the implementation board. The interlocal agreement currently requires a 2/3 majority vote of governing committee members that are present in order to amend the annual budget or the goals, policies, and plans of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, developed and approved by the Implementation Board. This means that, in effect, as few as 6 people on the governing committee could amend the work of the Implementation Board if the minimum quorum of 9 governing committee members is present. So the proposed amendment would require that at least 8 members of the governing committee would need to affirmatively vote to amend these documents, regardless of the number of members present. This sets a higher threshold for these discrete actions and would help, I believe, to prevent scenarios in which a proposal which fails to achieve broad agreement could be pushed through with as few as 6 votes of the governing committee. Again, I believe this amendment furthers the goals of the RHA, which necessitates that the governing committee be a collaborative oversight body that strives to achieve consensus, and that would lead to developing a regional approach to addressing the issues of homelessness in King County in that spirit. So thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to describe the motivation and the impact and effect of this amendment B if it is adopted. And I would strongly encourage my fellow members of the governing committee to support Amendment B. Thank you.
Angela Burney.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Lorena, for describing why you brought this amendment forward. And I appreciate the higher threshold and the importance of all of us working together to make sure that we're doing following the guidelines that we have set forth. My one concern over this in particular is that this amendment was offered while we were working on the ILA before it was approved, and this in particular was rejected. And so I have great concerns about it going against what the intent of the ILA was that was passed by both Seattle and King County at the time, and that we all agreed to. So, and for that reason, I'll be voting no on this. Although I do absolutely appreciate the underlying interest in why this is being brought forward.
Any other discussion? And I will say that I agree with what Angela said. As far as I understand wanting to make sure that this is outside of politics. I think that's very important. But I know that this was a huge issue when this was in front of the Regional Policy Committee. And it was voted down. And for that reason, I'll also be voting no.
Ed, this is Jenny Durkin.
Mayor Durkin, please.
Thank you. This is Jenny. I am going to be voting for and support this motion. I appreciate Angela and your comments on this. I think my recollection is a little bit different, but I think that really this is in keeping with I think what we intended all along, which was to make sure that these policies for the most important things, the budgets, goals, policies, and plans, that we would not be amending or reversing the people that we are going to empower to run this agency without there being a true significant majority, and that it shouldn't be decided by less than that amount of votes. That amount of votes that this would put in place assumes that people will show up and vote. And I don't think things as important as that should be decided just because people might miss a meeting, and you can therefore not get that number. So the number is consistent with what was at least my intent throughout this process, to make sure that our body is one that is the fail-safe, but that we truly are empowering the CEO and the board to make the hard decisions, but with us as oversight. So for that reason, I'll be supporting the motion.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. Any other comments? I actually do have a question. In Amendment A, we elected alternates. Do we think that the alternate election will circumvent some of this as far as being worried about the number of folks? If someone can't make it and their alternate can make it, will we still have, we should ideally still have the amount of people that we're expecting to have?
This is Lorena from Seattle. I mean, from my perspective, I think that the two go hand in hand. I think the fact that we've created an opportunity for alternates to show up increase the likelihood of consistent participation and the presence of of a majority, a super majority of governing committee members who are entitled to vote present. So I think it helps to ameliorate the potential concern of some folks that we wouldn't somehow be able to meet the minimum 8 vote requirement. And again, I just want to be really clear for the viewing public and for us in this conversation that this higher threshold is only applicable to items related to the budget, goals, policies, and plans. And so there's a whole host of other things that the implementation board is going to be doing that will continue to be subject to that lower 2/3 of members present. The distinction for me is that, again, as Jenny just outlined, issues related to the budget, policies, goals, and outcomes of investment decisions, I think should be subject to a higher level of scrutiny and to a higher standard in terms of this body, the governing committee, having the authority as elected officials who are politically elected to overturn those decisions. And so, again, I think that the two amendments do go together, and I think that the Amendment A increases the likelihood that we will have consistent increased participation at the governing committee meetings by either elected officials or alternates.
Thank you, Lorena. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Sarah, can you do a roll call vote?
Nancy Backus. Angela Burney.
Nay.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn.
No.
Jenny Durkin.
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez.
Aye.
For Jonathan Hemphill, Karen Taylor.
Aye.
Andrew Lewis.
Yes.
Kirk McLean.
Yes.
Joe McDermott.
No.
Ed Prince.
No.
That was a no, Ed?
Yeah, that was a no.
Zanita Reed.
Yes.
That is 7 ayes, 4 nays.
The ayes have it. Moving on to Amendment C.
Sorry, this is Zanita Reed. I had to take it off of. In regards to Amendment C, I'll just give a little bit of background in regards to why this is so important. So the core mission of the LEC is to increase participation by community members most impacted by homelessness in the governance, design, and implementation of the homelessness services. We know that communities most impacted by homelessness are experts in knowing that what we need to achieve for stable housing. This is why the theory of change for the new regional homeless authority centers and shares power in unprecedented ways with the lived experience community. The other design for the King County Regional Homelessness Authority structure articulated that the LEC would have the authority to appoint individuals with lived experience to the governance and implementation boards. As the legislation was deliberated in late 2019, county officials stated that the LEC could not directly appoint governing members as the LEC was not a legally recognized, formalized entity. Therefore, the authority was delegated to the COC Advisory Board, which we all know with somewhat vague language articulating collaboration with the LEC. But as of July 9th, 2020, the LEC is now a legally recognized entity through a formalized fiscal sponsorship with building changes. So it's imperative that the LEC has full authority to select its members to the governing and implementation board, just like Sound Cities Association, Seattle Council, and the city and the county council have their entities or stakeholders decide which individuals are picked for should be able to decide those. The LEC committee and implementation board seats is not a huge conflict of interest if you do that. It promotes paternalism, systematic oppression, and tokenism, which I felt at the last meeting, but we won't talk about that. Furthermore, we propose that additional amendments that clarify the LEC's authority to select and remove members and designate member service terms in alignment with the theory of change. Finally, we would propose amendments to further clarify and define the vacancies, our alternates, our member selection, quorums, and timely provisions of meeting agendas and things just as everybody else does on this board. And those amendments are all included in your packet. So that's just a little history. So there you go. I would like to move that we adopt these amendments.
I second.
It's been moved by Zanita, seconded by Jenny, that we adopt Amendment C. Is there any discussion? Angela?
Full of all kinds of comments today. I actually want to say thank you so much for bringing forward this amendment. The intent of the ILA was to give opportunities for lived experience individuals to have those same opportunities that we as elected officials have in this group. I'm happily supporting this. It's absolutely in the spirit of what this organization should be. And so thank you for bringing it forward.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, Sarah, can you call the roll?
Nancy Backus. Angela Burney.
Aye.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn.
No.
Jenny Durkin.
Aye.
Lorena Gonzalez.
Aye.
Jonathan Hemphill. Karen Taylor.
Aye.
Andrew Lewis.
Aye.
Kirk McLean.
Aye.
Joe McDermott.
Aye.
Ed Prince.
Aye.
Zanita Reed.
Aye.
Zanita, can I have your vote again?
Oops. It's aye. Aye.
Thank you. That is 10 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, motion carries. Amendment D.
Okay, this is Kirk McLean. I want to submit my comments for support of this amendment. I'll just start by saying the following. The specific changes proposed in Amendment D clarifies that all meeting minutes and all meeting materials are required to be provided to governing committee members 7 days in advance. The amendment also ensures that staff at the regional authority must meet information requests made by the LEC appointed members and the LEC staff. The original bylaw language only requires the meeting agenda, not the supporting materials, be provided 7 days in advance. Setting a firm requirement for these materials provides accountability to staff to provide materials early so that the LEC members and other working people involved have time to review and discuss the materials. This amendment is consistent with the commitment to equity made within the ILA. One of the biggest questions for us during the selection of the governing committee members was how will you share information with your constituents? For us, it is important that we continue to center that time is necessary to get the feedback and understanding of the issues at hand from our constituents and the people that we represent to serve on this board. Now, for us with the LEC, we are volunteers, we're part-time folks. So when we get materials from you guys 1 day before the meeting, we simply do not have the time or the bandwidth to get that information out to everyone and understand it. I mean, if I can't understand what I'm reading because I haven't had enough time to consult with Lamont or hadn't had enough time to consult with Jonathan or with Karen, it makes it very difficult for me to take that back to my constituency and the folks who support me and us, where they will understand it and even be able to make an intelligent, informed decision on what we're talking about. So I know the 7 days seems like a long time, but because we don't even have a staff person yet, we're still working on that, I think, and we just simply need more time. I see 20 emails in my Gmail box, and they're all from the King, staff and folks at the King County Homeless Regional Authority. And it's just like, what do I do? And so I need time. We need time to get this material, to understand it, read it, and then bring it back to our folks. So I would urge that we would pass this amendment, please, or adopt the amendment.
Kirk, would you like to make a motion?
I don't know, Ed. I'm not for sure if I should do that or not. Maybe I might need to consult with my folks on this. I'm going to do it like everyone else is doing it. I'm going to just do it how Lorena did it and how the mayor's office did it. So whatever they did, that's what I want to do. Does that make sense? Okay.
I will go ahead and make the thing to the amendment D in the bylaws. I will put that forward.
And this is Angela Burney. I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Zanita, seconded by Angela, that we adopt Amendment D. Jenny?
I have a question for Kirk. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Would you be open to a friendly amendment that wrote in language that if 8 votes determined there was an emergency that warranted less than a week, that we could do that? Because if it's in the bylaws, I think we might not be able to, and I can foresee some emergencies that we convene as a board and want to take some action. But I know that hasn't been discussed, so that if that's something you want to discuss later, we can do that too.
Yeah, I think I'd be okay with that, Mayor Durkin. I don't see why not. I mean, I know things do come up with folks, and so yeah, I'd be okay with that.
All right, I would offer that as a friendly
Do
amendment.
I have to?
Mayor Durkin just offered the friendly amendment.
I second. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Okay, I second. All right.
Is there moved by Jenny, seconded by Kirk? Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, call for a roll call vote.
Nancy Backus. Angela Burney.
Aye.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn.
Aye.
Jenny Durkin. That was a yes. Jenny.
A heartfelt yes.
Thank you. Lorena Gonzalez.
Yes.
Jonathan Hemphill. Karen.
Aye.
Andrew Lewis.
Yes.
Kirk McLean.
Yay.
Joe McDermott.
Aye.
Ed Prince.
Aye.
Zanita Reed.
Aye.
And real quick, Kirk McLean, just confirming your vote, was that yes or no?
That was a yes.
Great, thank you. And that is 11 yeses, 0 nos.
All right, motion carries. Amendment E. Angela.
Thank you. So we put together this amendment, and we were hoping to get it in the bylaws themselves, but now we have an amendment. It is just putting into our rules kind of the process we've already been doing with rotating of chairs, and so it will create an executive committee that is one representative from each of the kind of 4 legs of this table. And they will figure out who is chairing the meeting when, and they will work with the CEO to produce the agenda. And so we just thought it would be good. And initially in the ILA, it had a description of co-chairs and such. And we thought this was so far working well. I think Zanita did a wonderful job last week, and it's doing a great job as well. And though we're not done yet, it's hard to say. However, I just think it would be good to just codify this or put this in the rules so that we just continue on with this process. So I would move Amendment E.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Zanita.
Yeah, I just have one question in regards to the executive. I saw it said executive group or whatever of 4. So if it is rotating chairs through blocks, that executive group, though, would that mean that it would rotate or whoever? That's what I'm wondering. Would it be one specific chair or could it be different ones? And if you're having an executive group, would it be the person that we chose for that quarter or whatever for the meeting? I just want to be clear in that when we're talking about an executive group of the block.
I think as it is written, it would be the person that your group has chosen to represent you in this group, just as the person to run the meetings and set the agenda. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, call for a roll call vote.
Nancy Backus. Angela Burney.
Aye.
Dow Constantine.
Aye.
Reagan Dunn.
Aye.
Jenny Durkin.
Nay.
Lorena Gonzalez.
No.
Jonathan Hemphill, Karen Taylor.
Abstain.
Could you say that again?
I think she said abstain, but I.
Abstain.
Thank you. Andrew Lewis.
No.
Kirk McLean.
Abstain.
Joe McDermott.
Aye.
Ed Prince.
Aye.
Zanita Reed.
Abstain.
One sec while I tally these. That is 5 ayes, 3 nays, and 3 abstentions.
Okay, so I need some guidance on this. What does that mean for this motion since we have the 3 abstentions?
Mr. Chair, this is Constantine.
Yes.
Since there's clearly not consensus on this item, which was actually in the spirit of the previous vote to require 8 votes, I would like to change my vote from aye to no and allow us to pick this idea up at a future meeting.
Okay. Seeing that, we have 4 ayes, 4 noes, 3 abstentions. Motion fails, and we'll bring it back up at a future meeting. All right, it is 12:02. I do not believe we have anything else on our agenda. I do want to mention that Mayor Backus had an emergency that she had to attend to, and that's the reason why she's not able to be here today. Is there anything else for the agenda? Seeing none, we have a meeting on September 17th. There's nothing else in front of the committee. The committee meeting is adjourned. See y'all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ed. Good job.
Have a great day.
Great job, everyone.